Representative Liz Cheney was recently questioned on January 6th, the future of the GOP.
Are you worried about what that means for the country to see a former president prosecuted, a former president who is a likely candidate, who may in fact be running for president against Biden? It would be Biden's Justice Department. It would be prosecuting.
I have greater concern about what it would mean if people weren't held accountable for what's happened here. I think it's a much graver constitutional threat if a president can engage in these kinds of activities and the majority of the president's party looks away, or we as a country decide, we're not actually going to take our constitutional obligation seriously. I think that's a much more serious threat.
Can the Republican Party survive in the way you've known it if Donald Trump is again chosen?
It can't survive if he's our nominee.
No.
No. I think that he can't be the party nominee, and I don't think the party would survive that. I believe in the party, and I believe in what the party can be and what the party can stand for, and I'm not ready to give that up. Those of us who believe in Republican principles and ideals have a responsibility to try to lead the party back to what it can be.
Cheney also discussed whether she would run for president in 2024, something that I think tens of people are calling for. I don't know her.
So do you run for president? Do you see yourself running for president as a way to prevent what you say would be the destruction of the party, ultimately damaging to our country?
I haven't made a decision about that yet, and I'm obviously very focused on my reelection. I'm very focused on the January 6th committee. I'm very focused on my obligations to do the job that I have now, and I'll make a decision about 24 down the road. But I think about it less in terms of a decision about running for office and more in terms of, as an American and as somebody who's in a position of public trust now, how do I make sure that I'm doing everything I can to do the right thing, to do what I know is right for the country, and to protect our Constitution.
I don't know, Batya, what do you think? Liz Cheney for president? I mean, it's just not, it's just such a fantasy, right? I mean, she's not, her only supporters are kind of like resistance liberals. She has no credibility. Even if she, and I share her views about Donald Trump's unfitness to be president.
I do share her
absolutely.
views there.
But she is not a kind of the right messenger for this because she has no credibility in this party she's trying to reform.
Yeah, it's like how many Democrats are going to vote for a totally pro-life Republican, right? Just because she hates Donald Trump. I mean, when I talk to people, and again, like when I talk to the most MAGA people that I know, Liz Cheney's not the name that's coming up. Ron DeSantis's name is coming up a lot. And, there's some polls out already showing him ahead of Trump. That is definitely going to increase, as we get closer and closer to 2024. So to me, this is like very much wishful thinking. And I think that January 6th was a travesty. Donald Trump's actions on that day were horrifying, and his rhetoric since then has been really, really, really terrible, and he has besmirched his legacy. At the same time, that legacy stands. He took a party that was, completely focused on the rich and on the donor class and on, people like Liz Cheney, who are very, very disconnected from where their working class base is at, and he forced people to take the concerns of the working class seriously. He got rid of NAFTA. He talked a lot about immigration, which is a big concern for working class Americans. He started a trade war with China. He put out all those tariffs, which I know, Robbie, you're not in favor of that stuff, but who is his working class base. I mean, he really made them feel seen, and the numbers are in. I mean, the economy was working so well, even for people in the bottom 25 percentile, and they know that. And that axe he took to the neoliberal consensus, I mean, that was extremely important. And I think that the divide that you're seeing in the Republican Party is like, yes, it's over like the horrifying events of January 6th for sure. But more importantly, there's a much deeper divide happening over economic issues. And I think it's very important that whoever replaces him keeps their eye on that ball. And I think it could be that DeSantis is ready to do that.
I don't think that the insurrection besmirched Donald Trump's legacy. I think it reflected negatively on America and our democracy, and I think it impacts our own legacy. internationally negatively, but I think it's very much so in keeping with Donald Trump and his presidency. All the rhetoric, he was emboldening these kinds of people, the entire administration, which is exactly why so many people rushed out in record numbers to vote him out. So I actually don't think it besmirched his legacy, but I do agree with you that Liz Cheney is not the best messenger. I don't think she has any. I don't think she has a hope in the world of
she
winning.
Can't even win. She can't win a House Republican primary for the House in Wyoming.
Exactly. So I don't think she has any shot at becoming president. But I do very much so agree with her that it is a dangerous precedent to allow something like this to happen and for the president to just get away with it. I think it's dangerous in and of itself that you could have a sitting president just decide, you know what?
Right.
Even though everybody before me has rolled with democracy and how this goes, they lose an election and they concede and they help their successor, transition. Here, we did not see that.
Yes, and I will say that you might have thought, and I'm curious for your take on this, Batya, before we let you go. Even if Trump's effect, even if you're wildly positive about the effect Trump had on the Republican Party, he went out on such a sour note and such self-inflicted harm for the party, given what happened on January 6th and what he said before it. You might have expected more Republicans not perhaps to go the full Liz Cheney route, but it seems like they all, like a lot of them, leaders, want him gone. They don't want to continue to have to talk about this or defend this, but like no one wants to be the person to push him out the door. And so there's a lot of, not doing anything and allowing him to still kind of claim the mantle of leader of the party in a way that is clearly not good for the GOP anymore when they have a DeSantis or whoever else waiting in the wings.
Look, I mean, nobody ever went broke betting on the cravenness of politicians, right? Like that's like, definitely, but at the same time, I will say, I think a lot of them, like Trump, are very afraid of their voters. That's the problem with America today is there's a sort of crisis of leadership where people are following rather than leading. And I do admire Liz Cheney. I do think that she is leading and she has taken on her side in a way that's going to maybe cost her political career. You don't see a lot of that anymore. But at the same time, like from a purely Democratic sort of lowercase d point of view, I'm not sure that it's terrible for them to be sort of waiting, testing the waters, waiting to see where the base goes, waiting to see who the electorate wants. If the electorate chooses Donald Trump, like for us to catastrophize about that, there is something anti-democratic about that. If that is who they choose, I happen to think that's not who they're going to pick. I happen to think that his support is waning, and I think he knows it.
I think so too.
But you know what? We'll see. Prognostication is a totally no journalist should ever do that because right. But the question will be, I feel like I want to say ask me this question in a year. If they choose him again, we'll have to really revisit that question. But right now, I really feel like the wind is in the DeSantis sails and it's sort of pushing him forward.
But you hit on a really good point that Republicans have decided finally, eventually, a lot of them at least, they're listening to their loudest, most activated, most motivated voters.
And
Democrats haven't figured that one out yet.
I was going to say, I was going to push back. I was going to say, I think that's a good thing. I think politicians should be scared of their voters. That's how it works. The people that are putting you in power, you should be answerable to them. You should be doing what they want. So I think that's actually why you see a lot of success amongst Republicans, and I'm constantly saying this. They listen to their voter base, crazy or not, bigoted or not, in my opinion. They listen to them, and I think that's important. And I think that's why you see a lot of lack of success on Democrats' part. Democrats voters say something, and Democrats come out and condemn the voters or criticize the voters and say, oh no, that's not what they want. They want a moderate centrist platform that their own voters continuously tell them, no, we need you more left. So I actually think that's a good thing that Republicans do.
You won't believe this one neat trick for winning elections. Number 19 will surprise you. It's do what your voters want. Batya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.